Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome LJ and Hans from ON2IT to talk to us today a little bit about their approach to zero trust implementation and the use case implementing zero trust in shipyards, which is of keen interest to us, both in terms of our research and developing guidance for the Jan Koningen's 5-step method, but also in terms of our focus on critical infrastructure lately. So definitely keenly interested in hearing more about all of that. So with that, let me turn it over to LJ and Hans to do a little more intro and to kick it off. Thank you.
Super. All right. Hi, everyone. Why are we doing this talk? Well, as Eric already mentioned, zero trust is, of course, pretty well known, but I think we also have to be realistic that quite often zero trust kind of stalls in practice. Could be a whole bunch of different reasons. And today we're going to take you a little bit along a ride of a Dutch family-owned yet multi-billion dollar business, a shipyard. We are complex. We have IT, we have OT, we have supply chain risk, everything, regulatory pressure, you name it. This talk is not about why zero trust itself is important. I think everybody knows that. It's more how to do it right. And that's pretty much the goal of this session. So we're going to take you along the do's and don'ts, or the what to avoid and what to do. So let's see if we can do that.
Yeah, well, Hans, let me first then briefly introduce you, because Hans is the CISO of Damen Shipyards. He's been with the company for 15 years, and as you can imagine, that's a long time in IT, right? So he has seen the evolvement of especially the IT department of Damen Shipyards over the years, and now he is the CISO, so responsible to make sure that all those ships are securely built and their IT is all sound and safe. I mean, as Damen Shipyards, if you haven't, we'll actually show you a lot of pictures today of ships that are actually made by Damen Shipyards. Those are large, so it's probably not on your bucket list to buy any of them. But Hans promised me there are also slightly smaller models that maybe you can procure. But that's not, of course, the goal of today. But Hans, well, he knows everything about this whole environment and about the change that Damen went through. So Hans, you would say probably that you have the greatest job in the world, right?
Oh, absolutely, Lieuwe, certainly. Best job in the world, best company. So yeah, but then allow me to do the honor of introducing you. I think you're equally important in this situation, because we took this journey pretty much together. Lieuwe is one of the founders of ON2IT, a Dutch company with nowadays also a presence in the US. And widely known for their different approach to cybersecurity. Some of you certainly know the history of Jan Koning. Well, John and Lieuwe, and especially the entire ON2IT organization, have quite a bit of history there. Myself, to a certain extent included. I've been on stage with John proclaiming the 5 steps of zero trust. So and that's, but it is obviously this is not a big sales pitch. We're here to give you a little bit more of actual insight on everything which is possible, and I think that we should switch to that immediately. So, Lieuwe, what from your point of view, because we've done so much together over the last years. But you guys have done much more than just Damen. What do you see where people struggle from your point of view with regards to zero trust?
Yeah, let's indeed talk about that, and we'll of course give some pointers on what we think works best and what doesn't. So that's what today is all about. By the way, there's a question from the audience. Keep them coming. Hans, people want to buy a boat where they can ski behind. So I guess you do have those, the tugboat, for example.
Certainly.
The picture may come up. So yeah, but
could be, and otherwise you build one.
Exactly. Yes, true. So yeah, what does well, if I have to summarize this just to one thing, I would probably say that often organizations think it's too big, it's too much, it's too overwhelming. Sometimes organizations or individuals in an organization say, I'm never going to pull this off. I'm never going to replace my switches with a firewall. I'm never going to make so much policy and all of that. So that's what sometimes hindering people to even start. And also because there's often not a clear first step defined. We'll talk about that in a minute. We also sometimes get that the business is maybe not ready in the minds of people, of security people. For example, if you have a web shop that you're running and this is your primary source of income as a company, then it's sometimes hard to enable the IPS in blocking mode because availability is everything. And sometimes hard to convey that security is actually also a form of availability, despite the small risk that things indeed get blocked sometimes. So that's one of the things I see. What do you think, Hans? In your organization?
In our organization, well, obviously, if you look at our organization and along the right, we're going to take you all, you will see many products of Damen pass by, meaning that we have I don't think there's any shipbuilder in the world who has the same extensive portfolio as we do. Which also makes it very challenging, of course, for us, because we have to realize that apart from, for instance, the vessel you see over here, which is, I think right now servicing Brazilian windmill farms out in the open waters, we do a lot of defense, but we also cater to the ultra rich of this world. We do the 1% of the 1%. We do the super yachts where everybody is envious of. So you can imagine that we have a very complex environment. We have a very complex landscape. We sometimes also have a very complex organization because we have multiple divisions who try to share platforms, but they are operating in different markets. So we have what a shipyard is. We have quite often some outdated technology. Maybe could be an old dock which is digitized, which is controlled in that matter. We might have ultra modern production facilities, anything in between. We have, of course, a lot of regulation coming our way, especially here in Europe. There's a whole bunch of regulation which is adding constant pressure to the already quite a significant amount of regulation. And of course, we strongly believe that we have to protect ourselves as best as possible. So that's where I think it was like a little over 10 years ago when we started our Zero Trust journey. And we did a few things prior to that, which didn't really work. We tried traditional detection and response, which you're always running too late. You're always lagging behind. So we tried a lot of different things there. And what we really wanted to do is we wanted to actually change from reactive to preemptive, because that's the way it should be. That's quite often not, of course, the case, and especially if you're looking towards traditional organization or traditional businesses like ours, that would always be a thing. So we had, in the course of the last, let's call it 10 years, we achieved quite a few things. We definitely made some oops moments along the journey, those as well. But I think we can share a few things we thought, well, that might be interesting for other people to learn. So yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, shall we first talk about the things that do work well then?
Let's do that. Let's have a start there. And then we start with the first one, and that is quite often I actually don't even use the term zero trust. It kind of depends on the audience. It might be a language thing, of course. None of us, or at least in the Netherlands, are native in English. Which means that the principle behind zero trust could also be kind of like threatening to people, because it means I don't trust you. It means relationships in business-wise are to a certain extent based upon trust of each other. So quite often I actually I try to turn it around. I try to say it's something like anti-fragile security, or at least not which has the rule of zero trust behind it. But what is even much more important is the fact that you have to speak the language of the business, and you have to focus on what they think is important. And I think within IT, many of us, and I've been around also quite a few years, I've also made that error. I tried to convince them with throwing more technical jargon at them, which usually can just chase them away. And the most important part about zero trust is the fact that you can't do it without your business stakeholders. They are vital because they can actually decide and tell you what the real crown jewels are in your organization. And I think that is crucial to do. And if you don't do that, if you're just approaching it as a strictly IT, yeah, then you're probably going to have tremendous issues. And I'm also in serious doubt whether or not it will be as successful as it could be if you're doing it the other way around, Lieuwe. So yeah.
Yeah. By the way, are these the boats in the picture that are on top of the boat that you can ski behind? Are they fast enough?
The ones you're seeing over here, these are pretty much just built to stock tugboats, and those are pretty nimble, but they're not quick enough to actually. No. I'll give you a notification once those pop up.
So we're talking here about aligning with the business, right? It's one of the core principles of zero trust, actually. I mean, Jan Koning, we can't thank him enough. He realized that early on, while I was still doing nerdy things in segmenting networks and all, he told me, hey, it's actually the business that needs to be aligned, and that's what you're advocating here as well. So when we speak about talking to the business and maybe to the whole IT department or to the whole organization, there's another thing that you came to learn is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's dashboarding, are actually just showing your progress, but showing your risks, showing everything there. I think that one thing which we actually should have started with earlier is to create a dashboard for my entire organization, showcasing where we are, what we're going to do, what the current status is, and everything there. And once again, make certain you do it in a manner that the business understands. I actually, eventually I started almost, I wouldn't say scaling down, but removing a lot of the clutter, which you, from an IT perspective, you would immediately recognize. But you have to understand that that can be kind of like an information overload for the recipient if they're not IT savvy. And well, the majority of people, especially in a shipbuilding organization, they are incredibly tech savvy. They can be very technical about how we're going to design a new type of vessel, how we're going to do that, but they're not necessarily tech savvy, and especially not cybersecurity savvy. So doing this in a manner where you approach it in a way that everybody understands it from a business perspective, you might actually lose certain IT savvy people who think, well, this is not that much detail for me. Well, you give them some other information, but the majority of your organization, you give them that. And that really helps because it makes it much more visible for them and easier to understand. And I think that's definitely vital for this. So yeah.
The Cloud Security Alliance actually published a document on how to define protect services that gives a lot of pointers on how to show progress as well. So I certainly recommend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shall I speak a little bit about my favorite thing that I always talk about to everyone who wants to listen to me, right? Because I mean, like I said in the beginning, it can be so overwhelming. I have in some of my presentations a big elephant, and the title is "How to Eat an Elephant," because sometimes it feels like that. And in effect, just start. That would be my thing to do. I mean, we have the 5 steps of zero trust that Jan Koning laid out for us, right? And the first one is to define a protect service. The document of the protect service definitions is in the chat.
Super.
Define the protect service. That's the first step, and then we go through all the steps. I'm sure you've all heard about those before. There's plenty of content, of course, online to make you go through all that. But it's really the 5 steps are meant to just do for one thing. For example, take the HR system, or take a finance system, take the DNS server, pick something that you think is feasible, doesn't look too difficult at first, and go do that and go through the 5 steps there. You don't have to have a plan to do a couple of thousand protect services or even start to define them. No, we actually most of the time start with 5. And there's always one that's really easy, very simple, very straightforward. There's one in the cloud. Maybe there's a SaaS solution in there. There's one that is really legacy, and maybe also a big crown jewel, like the value of your data. But maybe scope is really small. I think that's the thing. And then because then you get champions in your organization. The technical champion, like the firewall administrator, gets excited. The network administrator gets excited.
Yep.
Application design. Maybe it's somewhere in the development department that really likes it. And then that's how you build success stories. I think that's an important thing. This also overcomes some hurdles that especially technicians tell you, because there's 2 things that are predominantly thrown at me. One is performance. This is never going to be fast enough, because if I have to scan all the traffic and etc., my equipment cannot cope with that. And the other one is the complexity of the rules and the policy that I need to make, because now I need for every server me to make a firewall policy and all of that. We can do a whole session about why. It's in practice actually easy. Performance, for example, if you look at performance, predominantly the most data that gets through between applications. It's not between applications or protect services where the most volume of data is typically. It is within a protect service, and that's the stuff we don't necessarily have to let through a firewall, for example. There's many of those things, and if you start small with just 1 or 2, you will experience this, and you will see that those big hurdles that you thought were there don't really exist. So.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true. I think there's one extra there, which isn't necessarily the start small one, but it's also one which I've certainly used, and that is never let a good crisis go to waste. Because if there's something which really gets all the proverbial ducks in a row, it's the moment you have a crisis. And in our organization, we had a situation quite a few years ago already, where we had acquired a new company, also a shipyard, and that yard, we normally when we procure a company, we are rolling out our golden template. So we're bringing all the new equipment in there, and that's where we start from. And in this location, the initial investment was obviously a certain amount. And at that moment, that division, they said, okay, well, we don't really have the money for that initial investment at this moment. So can't you do it without? Well, no, I'm not going to do it without. So we're not going to integrate them. So we're going to keep them completely isolated, et cetera, et cetera. Lo and behold, and I had absolutely nothing to do with it. It really helped me, of course, but I'm completely innocent. Just want to state the obvious. Something went wrong there. Which means that the entire organization there, and luckily we had all the equipment stocked and ready. We were completely prepared with our team, so we could easily deploy it. And within, I think, like 4 or 5 days, the entire environment was switched to our new platform. But you can imagine, I milked the living daylights out of that one for a prolonged period in my organization, because that also means that I'm constantly saying to everybody, guys, I'm not going to let this happen again. And everybody realizes that we can't let this happen again. So it is a little bit of a dead giveaway, of course, but it really helps if you want to achieve something. And obviously, we all hope that it doesn't happen. But if it happens, of course, it's also a training for your entire staff, because it's the best training they can have. It's going to obviously hurt, and you really don't want it. But when it happens, also, there is some sort of a bright side, and that's usually afterwards. It might not be directly, but it's definitely afterwards.
Yeah, so the crisis can spark the beginning. I do remember that day that I had to call you and say, listen, from Damen IP space, we see this attack going on. I was afraid that we missed something or anything, but luckily it had another cause. Yeah. Where did Damen start? What kind of protect service how did you start this?
We started with just a few. What you're saying earlier, it starts small. Well, we did not really start small. In all fairness, we thought, well, if we have to going to do this, we're going to do it seriously. So we started with our ERP solution at that moment. And you can imagine that a global organization with an ERP solution used in different continents in the world isn't that easiest one. But we also had so much belief in this approach that, and I had everybody backing in the organization here. So for me, it was relatively easy to say. It doesn't mean that the entire process was easy. So we started with our ERP solution. We did AD, we did Exchange. And I think those were the original 3 ones where we started off with. So yeah.
Yeah. There's another one that's big, huh? When you're in the process.
Yeah, there's certainly another one which is big. Let me switch to the next one. For some reason, my clicker here. There we go. Yeah, indeed, and that's right. The tidal wave, and that's something which for us was a big shift in our organization. We at that moment, prior to actually doing the Zero Trust program together with you guys, we were still doing everything on premise. We had a very strict no cloud policy. I vividly remember that in 2012, I did some talks at some events here in the Netherlands stating that we're not going to do cloud because we don't trust it. Well, lo and behold, of course, a few years later, everything changes. But we also, at that moment, we realized that looking at our global landscape and our organization, when I joined the company, all the different locations, 35 plus, were completely independent. They shared nothing. They hardly even shared the same color of blue, which we have in our logo. So you can imagine a scattered landscape. Everything had bolts on where it was expanded. And it was definitely not a mature organization. So we started to change that. And we also realized that none of our locations had kind of like the base level where we could build on and say, okay, this is going to be kind of like the launching platform where we're going to grow into the rest of the organization. So we had to start from scratch, which of course for us meant that we're going to do it properly with security by design from the initial part. And that's what we did. We refreshed pretty much everything. So we literally started with a clean slate. We hired some data centers in 2 different countries. And we said, okay, that's where we're going to house our new services. And that's where we're going to do everything from that moment onwards. And then we're going to expand and expand and expand. So yeah, that really helped. So I would suggest everybody that the moment you are facing with a big change in your, not necessarily in your strategy, but in your platforms or in your solutions, that's also the perfect moment that you can say, okay, since we're going to do with a new application or with a new service or a new this or new this, that is the moment you're going to look towards Zero Trust for that part. And that might be the first slice of the proverbial elephant, as Lieuwe already mentioned it earlier. So yeah, absolutely.
And it helps a lot if before you discover this wave to make a leap on, that you've already practiced a couple of times or already have a few projects on their way and under your belt. So people are used to it. So people are less frightened about taking this step, because then it feels more natural to people to put it in, to make it part of such a bigger thing. We have multiple waves like this. I mean, this is going to the cloud. I mean, I have to say, cloud is kind of built for Zero Trust. It's so natural that you start a VPC or own firewall services per application. The thinking in protect services is baked in the cloud, more or less. Not every organization does that, unfortunately, but it makes it certainly a lot easier, because it's. I remember 10 years ago when we had VMware environments and we didn't even have NSX, for example, where segmentation then is hard. You really need to want to do that, right? And that's no longer the case, especially if you go into cloud or if you already are in cloud. But possible tidal wave right now. I mean, phasing out VMware, that a lot of organizations are doing right now for obvious reasons, is also one. But I've seen the migration to a new version of the Windows domain as a trigger. A move to a different data center where people were building up the new data center while the old one was still there. Well, you have to re-IP or redeploy all your servers. You might as well do it in a more segmented way. Those all help.
Yeah. Absolutely agree on that one. And I think with that, we're about for the last tip of things that work, Lieuwe. You're going to take that
Yeah,
one?
that's one you would easily forget, I think, because the benefit of implementing zero trust is already there. You already have the benefits of it once you did the first protect servers, and that's something to realize. You don't have to finish the project to the ambition level you want to go to already reap the fruits of it. And even
True.
so, if you're anxious about starting it, even after you've deployed 2 apps in this fashion and you're come to the conclusion, this is too much, or I don't want to do this anymore, or whatever, if that's your fear, you want to. The exit strategy is quite easy, right? But then even if you do that, the benefit is there because those 2 applications, those 2 protect services, you have already secured. So there is also not a risk in starting. So it may be obvious to me, of course, and I apologize since I've been doing this for years and years, but that's it's an immediate benefit, and that you can actually use to do the next project and the next one and the next protect service. So I certainly don't forget about that as well.
Yeah. One more thing before we forget, the last one, you could actually ski behind those boats. So thanks for going back one there. So I hope I covered this one. I think those are. And there's a few million a piece, so there might be obtainable for some of you guys. I don't know, but okay.
We'll share the contact details of Hans.
Yeah, it can be
order the
raised.
boat like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this works well, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
So far.
Yeah, so far I think those are the things which went well. And now, of course, it's the painful part. That's the stuff where things go wrong. And the first one I'm actually asking for you to do because obviously we didn't face that one. So I'll let you do the honors for this one, or it's too painful. I don't know yet.
Well, I'll tell you about a workshop that I did with a customer. That was years ago when Zero Trust wasn't as well defined yet. It was most of it a network play, like a network design thing. I mean, the core of Zero Trust, don't get me wrong, is still segment your network, make sure that nobody can talk to any system that they are not supposed to, and especially between systems to avoid lateral movement, of course. But I did a workshop with a customer, did all this, and they were like, yeah, that's a great story. We really need to be doing this. Finally, this is the solution. And then 3 months later, I didn't hear a lot from this customer back then. And 3 months later, we met again. And then this technical guy, I have to say, proudly just, showed me the 3,000 VLANs he had created on his core switch. It was all, cloud wasn't really a thing for that company at that moment in time, with all the protect servers he has defined. And now he was wondering what's next. And because now there needs to be firewall rules in place, and we need to do all the things that we need to do. And that's making it difficult. So overcomplicating things, I mean, and put few architects or technical people in one room, and you will get a very over-engineered design for anything. I'm sure that's the same thing if you try to design a boat, Hans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
You have one behind you.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm in your office, so this is a demo one we both use. But indeed, the reality is that we faced something like this as well. We had, I think you probably also can recall that. We had an issue where we would see that, well, the firewalls, they weren't really smoking yet, but I think we had a utilization peak, which, well, it didn't really come down. And after investigation, I think we realized that we actually made the error of saying that all our CCTV streams would also be completely inspected via Zero Trust. And that wasn't the best design choice at that moment, I would say.
Yeah, and I remember that the technical guys on both our companies were actually trying to solve that issue. Can't we make the inspection faster and all that? And then the practical answer to this is, why would we do that in the first place? Why we should probably put our efforts somewhere else in another application to try to do that, and simply disable scanning here for this particular application. Also, because we did step 2, the transaction flows, nobody was actually talking to the it's kind of an isolated environment, right? CCTV. Yep. I mean, there was of course a viewing part and a recording part of it, but it's not like the whole organization is interconnected. It's really isolated. So then you have to you have to put less effort in all the things that security could do here. So that made it much simpler.
Yep, absolutely true.
Shall I go to the next one?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah, this is also a fun one. Because the reality is that one of the things where many organizations, I think, actually kind of miss the point is that everybody thinks that the moment we implement zero trust, that we have all the technologies in the world available, we implement them, and we're set. But the reality is, of course, that you always have a situation where it is people, process, and technology. It's not just the technical controls. Technical controls on their own will not protect you completely. If you do not have the right procedures, if you don't really train your staff, if you don't do anything there, it will go wrong. And you're pointing at your technical solutions, and everybody is going to come back at you and saying, yeah, but you implemented it wrongly, or your staff wasn't trained, or whatsoever. Or even more, a more vivid example is the moment somebody deepfakes your CFO. How am I going to protect that from a technical filter? I don't know. I can do all sorts of mail rules, but I don't know how they can still do this on my private phone. I don't do anything. If I don't actually do other stuff apart from zero trust technical controls, if I don't train my staff in knowing, if I don't have the proper procedures, that our executives can't call me and say, you got to wire this money nowadays immediately, you're still going to have a tremendous risk, because nowadays what we see is that everybody else gets, of course, compromised. It's not just the technique. So yeah, which also means that the responsibility for security should not be limited to IT, and also not limited to just the security team within IT. It's completely in the business. It's their responsibility as well. And also this is zero trust. Obviously, in our organization, I don't say to my business, I want you guys to arrange it because you don't trust each other. I'm not going to use zero trust in that part, but I am going to use the principles there. And especially is, of course, focusing on your crown jewels there. So it is zero trust. It's just perhaps without the technical components, and in our case, then also perhaps even without using the name of zero trust. So yeah, but I think that's really important because
as well,
yeah, absolutely, it's absolutely important.
Yeah, and on the subject you mentioned user training. I mean. Yeah. It's also the procedures, right? So imagine
100%.
You are a large organization. Imagine you have to respond to any time any user clicks on a link that shouldn't be in front of the user. Of course, we do a lot of work to make sure that clicking on that link is not a problem at all, but in the end, it's never 100%. But it shouldn't matter too much. And a procedure, for example, in your example of the CFO, I mean, it's amazing how many organizations don't have proper tight procedures in place that allow for exceptional payments and all that. It has to be a very big rule: never transfer money outside of whatever the procedure is. And there's nothing that the technical guys can do about that, of course. But it's something that the organization has to do. It is. The funny thing is, indeed, it is, like you mentioned, the same principles of zero trust apply here.
Yeah,
but the strategy is even beyond, beyond technical stuff.
Yeah, the worst part is we also face that issue once again with a different company, which is not using the global services. It's actually a joint venture. But there we had a situation where the CFO was indeed approached in such a way. We retrieved all the money, so no harm done. But once again, I used the thing I mentioned earlier: don't let a crisis go to waste. That one has been used extensively as well. So yeah.
Nice. Our crisis can sometimes help us.
Once again, true.
Yeah. So the next one is about SaaS. SaaS is different. Different animal, and to me, an application. So protect service is a protect service regardless of where it is, right? So a SaaS application can be your HR data. It could also be an in-house developed application in the cloud. It could be something in the legacy system in VMware, for example. That doesn't matter from a perspective of VMware of zero trust. However, in SaaS applications, from a technical controls perspective, there's limited things you can do. Now, of course, we can limit it on IP address, for example. I mean, like if we have a SaaS solution, you can make sure that all traffic to the email environment, say Office 365, is funneled through a cloud distributed exit point in your organization. And if you know those IPs, that you do, you can actually tell Microsoft to only allow connections from there. Those are so if you want to be in control of flows, this is the closest we get from implementing a firewall in that SaaS environment itself. This is still a thing to think about in Zero Trust because it is regardless of the environment. So we need to be in control of flows, but it's very limited means that we have. Same with user management, adding users, removing users, of course, connecting it to your IDP system. That should be a requirement, honestly. But that doesn't say that there isn't like a backend system that you do not control. So it's much more like a supply chain thing, which is a completely different animal, different kind of playbook. How do you think about this, Hans?
Yeah, I agreed. That's certainly a completely different kind of playbook. Because that also means that in order to do that properly, you're going to need procurement, and it might actually take much longer because you might have a running contract which is up for renewal, or you might be in contract negotiations. You really need to invest in ensuring that those new requirements are actually not necessarily new, but probably for the vendor they might be new. But from your part, it's something which you've been doing already for the approach you're adopting since you're a zero trust believer. Walking together and actually working with the supplier in this case, that is something which you quite often can only do at the moment you're still in negotiations, because then you have the proverbial stick and the carrot. So I think it's also crucial to do that, because if you're going to do that at a later stage, and if you are being brought into it once the program or once the contract has already been signed, good luck on that one. That might mean that you can't really do the changes or the implementation you want to do until you have a renewal of the contract and a renegotiation there. So that will take longer. It's obviously it's possible, but it's also a little bit more complex because there are more, I would say, always moving pains which you have to take into consideration there. So I think that's
different departments involved, Hans?
Say again?
Different departments involved within Damen for this kind of...
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is obviously the most predominant part there, of course, is procurement, because those are the ones who are doing the negotiations with the vendors. And you will also see that you have to educate them there, because quite often when you do IT projects, then this is already a part of it. But once you do SaaS project, there you will see a different playing field. So yeah, and obviously you also will have the situation that with certain very large vendors, you will have also kind of like a completely different negotiation perspective there. What's possible and what is not possible.
So you have no choice, and then it's actually great for you as a CISO because it can't be your problem. You can solve it.
Yeah, but that is, you could say that, but I have to disagree on that one, because at the end of the day, even the fact that I can't solve it is still going to be my problem, and I have to do the utmost to ensure that whatever happens is as limited as possible. But yeah, I think SaaS can be almost like a new kind of headache there. Because it doesn't solve everything. You do have to take something into consideration there, Lieuwe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of different systems, there's also legacy, for example. What we've seen here is that, what I see a lot actually in many organizations, that it typically is there's one big legacy system considered legacy by the business. There's nothing they can really change easily on it. It could be a huge web shop. It could be an inventory system, mainframe, and there's a karma around it, like don't touch it. Right? We can't. It's very important to us. We know it's old. We know it's hard to patch. But there's no way we're going to put a firewall around it, or no way we're going to segment it out, or no way we're going to enforce multi-factor on it. It's simply not possible. And we encounter that a lot, actually. And that requires a different plan. And you need to make a separate plan for that. And at some point in your journey, when you've been practicing and you have done the easier ones, a few important ones, then this one is there on your way. So it's probably better to split it in smaller parts. For example, what we often do is help customers to first focus on connections that an application like that makes with the outside world, with the internet, with third parties, etc. Do that first. So that's not zero trust, right? Zero trust doesn't care where connections come from, but it can actually be part of your approach to first do certain segments of traffic. So in step 2, you map the transaction flows, who needs access to it. Just take a part of it and do that first. That's often, given the architecture of an application like this, easier to do it first, and then gradually you'll finish it. But it will probably be a longer term project. Another example is stepping stones. They are a different animal as well. I mean, or stepping stones, that's the solution. The problem is the admins using their laptop to connect to everything from their admin network, right? And they have to go through a stepping stone. That stepping stone cannot access the internet. It can access all kinds of all kinds of systems, and you need to have an extra layer of multi-factor authentication to get on that. Those kind of things. Different kind of animal, different kind of protect service requires separate attention. Don't start with it. But don't forget it and recognize it once you have this template of a standard template of how to roll out an application. There are different animals in there, and don't be afraid to change your way of coping with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've definitely, well, we faced it to a certain extent. We had a very lengthy discussion initially about it. What are we going to do with all the legacy systems? And in our case, we also had the discussion that many of our people were saying, you can't touch it or don't touch it at all. And the reality is that obviously I know where they're coming from. But if you really have a good discussion with them, and actually one of the first steps I said is talk to business language. If you can actually explain to them in their terms what the impact is, the moment it goes south, then you will see that there are possibilities, that there might be certain windows where you can do activities there. But there will always be kind of like I don't know, sometimes even a game of who shouts the loudest in your organization. And in an organization like ours, you can imagine that certain people can shout really loud. I have a tendency to not do that, only on occasion. But you will see that if you're talking about especially legacy systems, they are there for a reason. They're there for a very valid reason. But sometimes people can also be a little bit blindsided by it. So you also have to do a good discussion there. So really interact with them in their terms and their things. And I think that
I think it's time for our last
exactly.
thing that we should talk about. Our last pointer of things to do to watch out for.
Yeah, indeed. And that's basically, I was going to say just do it, but then I have to do copyrights with a certain company. But it's very simple. The first step is your first protect service. It's not the procurement of a new IAM solution, where many people nowadays actually focus on that one. And I can understand some of the reasoning behind it, but the reality is don't let a tool or let the perception that a tool is going to solve everything there. That's not true. When we started with our ERP solution, the very first one we did, Zero Trust, we didn't really focus on the IAM part. So yeah, I think that's very important to realize, because if you look at the market, I think the market is almost advertising it a different way at the moment. What do you think, Lieuwe?
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah, it is the thing with Zero Trust these days. It's what, like I said in the beginning, also it's sometimes overwhelming, all the marketing that gets at you, and it's confusing sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that identity isn't a crucial part of Zero Trust, right? Especially in step 4, create policy. It's important to have it as an ingredient, but it's not like it's identity, and oh, by the way, let's also implement some other countermeasures. That's certainly not it. You can, I mean, I don't need an identity system to have a default denial rule somewhere to block hackers, right? So there's so much more to it. We shouldn't solely focus on it. Focus on the 5 steps, make it small first. Hans, I think it's time to wrap up a little bit. To sum up, so if you look back at your decade of zero trust, I mean, there's not many people who can say that actually. What did it bring, Damen?
Yeah, well, to a certain extent, what didn't it bring down? Because we hadn't had a real security breach, of course. So I think that's the first one. So it didn't bring those stars. So I'm very happy about this one, of course. I'm also going to knock on wood.
Except that one thing when wasn't really a security incident
true,
of this.
True. And those were not part of our standard and whatsoever. Yeah. So, but the reality is that if
right,
so far it does. I'm getting a little bit anxious, of course. This one, I don't want to jinx it. But the reality is that if you see what we've done and in our approach, what we say is there's a few things I want to highlight there, and it's of course repeating some of the things I said in the years. Dashboarding, showing to your organization that it really works or what you're doing really helps. It is a dead giveaway, but I'm amazed sometimes at organizations, many organizations, where they have all sorts of fancy reporting internally, and they might actually use it with their MSSPs, but they don't really showcase it to the rest of the organization. So that really helps for your organization. In our case, the fact that we approach our environment and our usage based on zero trust really also helps in discussions I have with oversight, with compliance regulators, where I can explain, guys, we follow the zero trust philosophy there. So that really helps. On the other hand, what you can also say is that for any new threat which is coming, you're going to need prevention. And the goal, of course, is with zero trust to have much more insight in what's going to happen. Not just the detection there, you're going to make sure that it doesn't really propagate there. In our organization, I think we showcased that. We test it quite frequently. We try to do that as much as possible. Where we see that, of course, and that's a little bit, of course, in the technical part where I think almost, Lieuwe, you could probably explain it better than I can. But the reality is that we do not have that much lateral movement. We do have security incident. We might have people who are trying to do something on their laptop, which they really shouldn't be doing, and they are getting blocked and whatsoever, but it's contained. What we also see is that we have much less real emergency incidents because we've got our ducks in a row. You could say that we have less patching. Obviously, that's a little bit of a tricky part because the less patching is sometimes that you have applications, the legacy ones, which you can't really patch anymore, meaning that you cordon them off and you do everything there. But what also I think is important for us is that by having this security approach, we can actually lower our cybersecurity cost, our cybersecurity insurance cost, I should say. Sorry about that. Which obviously, where you see nowadays that many of the insurance companies, they're limiting the amount which they can actually pay out. So, and having a good story to tell them, having a good approach to tell them, really makes a difference there. So, but yeah, to a certain extent, and I'm really. It sounds dangerous to say something like that. I realize that we are spoiled. I realize spoiled that we have the maturity in our organization to take security very seriously, to come from a situation where we could start from a greenfield to a large degree. So color me a little bit tainted there, but for me, it's also interesting to have a look at it from you guys, from ON2IT, from what happens if you don't do really zero trust in 2025. Perhaps you can say something to also close it up a little bit there, anyway.
Yeah, what happens? Yeah, what not? Huh? What are the dangers here? What are not in control? To me, being in this whole thing for years, it's so simple to understand that connecting everything together that isn't necessary, that it is a risk in itself. Yeah, it's very obvious to me, but if I have to sum up a couple of things, I mean, it's all about being in control and making sure that if an incident happens, that it's really contained and it doesn't lead to a data exfiltration, for example. Prevention really is critical. Resilience needs to be more and more, also because there is new techniques every time. For example, we all know that we need to do MFA. But now, of course, the attackers also are finding things around that, so they're stealing our sessions and trying to register, use them to interact with the application, or even to register another token, another MFA. So we need to have more controls somehow. We need to do better constantly, and Zero Trust pushes you to do so. AI is there. I mean, many organizations may think or say, listen, I'm not really a target. Nobody's looking after me for real. AI makes it possible for the attacker to, at scale, just try everything to everybody. So yes, you will be damaged by that. So yeah, breaches will be harder to contain, I'm afraid. We also see that cyber insurance, the payout that cyber insurance companies need to make are higher and higher, and therefore they are limiting their coverage, of course. And what I also see happening is that they require certain Zero Trust requirements in order to lower the premiums or to double the coverage, for example. And that's a very interesting mechanism that we see happening in the next coming years. I expect that to be much more there. And then it's becoming more and more important to measure how well you do with Zero Trust. So you need that tool, the dashboard, for example. That's something we also help. So yeah, it's a lot of things you need to do. But like I said, I'm actually a bit worried about especially utilities that are not pursuing like this. But yeah, hey, I've been doing this so long. This is my life, right? I hope we get a little bit across that it's very important to be an expert in this and to figure out what you need to do and really start doing Zero Trust, because it really helps you. It's a strategy that actually works.
Yeah, and I think that that pretty much also what you said. You need an expert, and obviously within our company, well, we think we know a little bit about it, but I also know what I don't know. That's not entirely true. I know that I don't know everything. My wife disagrees with me on this one, actually. But the reality is that in a company like ours, we need a partner. And ON2IT has been a partner of Damen since very long, since 2008, I think, actually. So ridiculously long already, and we're still happily married there. We needed an organization because I'm not capable to have global coverage 24/7 on my own. I'm going to need external expertise. And even if I would be able to hire the people, I still would be missing out on the knowledge a larger company or a company who does it for more customers actually do that. So from our point of view, having a partnership is absolutely vital. Having a partnership with companies like an ON2IT, who does a lot for us, is absolutely vital. I'm still going to have all my challenges. I'm still going to have the impossibility to patch everything. I'm still going to have issues with visibility on yards all over the world, on isolated places. But that's exactly why you have the Zero Trust philosophy, to ensure that those locations, that once something happens, it stays there, or it's limited in such a location if those are not your crown jewels. And that's the stuff that ON2IT is really helping us with. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Hans.
I'm going to stop the sales pitch there. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, let's talk about what you can do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's sum this up. So first of all, no surprise, probably after today, just start. Go do it tomorrow.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's no reason not to. And maybe find a terminology, find this wave, find a lingo that you can use in your own organization. Zero Trust, anti-fragile, compliance sometimes is that. Figure it out. And there will be something. If it's not now, then next month to get some traction in the organization. And to the technical and security teams, I would say, just pick one, maximum of 5 protect services. Do that very well, and then build on top of that. And well, we're at the end of our time almost. I mean, start tomorrow, please. And I really want to shout out also to the Cloud Security Alliance for properly advocating zero trust. I mean, these guys understand. You guys do know what's going on. I'm always happy about the stuff I read and that you're advocating. Probably partly at least because John Kindervaag, the guy who we owe a lot to, is with you, right? And that's he was early on preaching about zero trust. Everybody would say, "Hey, you're crazy," and all of that. And look at it now. He was in a committee to talk to the president, and in the NSTAC committee wrote a report that's now distributed everywhere. So he kind of wrote the book on how to do zero trust, and I think the community owes him a lot. And of course, Hans, thank you for this partnership and for always being there to talk to your peers about what's in it for them. And I really value that there's people like you in organizations that want to share things that work, things that don't work. I think it's very, very helpful for all organizations. So with that, we maybe have time for 1 minute or so, or maybe back to you, Eric. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your attention, and feel free to contact us if you have any other questions. But maybe there's someone who wants to respond.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Hans and LJ. Very interesting presentation. The lessons learned, both the what worked and the things that could have gone a little better. Both are very, very useful. Definitely appreciate that. And you're right, we've gotten some very good lessons from John, who I see he's on the call. I don't know if he wants to jump in and say anything, but he's certainly welcome to.
Hey, how are you doing, John?
I thought he was in Helsinki preaching about zero trust again and making the world a better place.
Oh no, Helsinki was last week, my friend.
Oh.
Yeah, no, good to see you
He's always
guys.
ahead of us.
Hans, good to see you.
Hey, likewise, my friend. Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you for joining the CSA event here and talking about, doing this. It's been we've been working together a long time, and these CSA folks are doing a great job preaching the zero trust gospel to the world. So thanks, Eric. Thanks, Cloud Security Alliance. Thanks, Lieuwe and Hans. And we hope to see you in Netherlands very soon.
Indeed. Yeah, thank you all very much. And we look forward to, we'll circle back with you on, we're trying to put together an international zero trust symposium. So we'd like to keep you guys in mind for that one as well, for later this year. And we'll be publishing the recording on our CSA Zero Trust Circle community as well. And I'll send the link out to that. So thank you again very much. Much appreciated.
Sure. Well, happy to be here.
All right. And thanks everyone for your time. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye then.